At 7:03 p.m. Las Vegas time, Tupac Shakur passed away, y'all.
Trouble-plagued rapper and actor Tupac Shakur is dead at the age of 25.
Rap star Tupac Shakur died last night after a brief life in a rough business.
Shakur was shot 4 times after leaving the Mike Tyson boxing match in Las Vegas in a car driven by Marion Suge Knight, the head of his label, Death Row Records.
The murder of rapper Tupac Shakur remains one of the most sensational murder cases of all time. At the height of his career, the then 25-year-old musician and actor was shot dead in the middle of the street in the heart of Las Vegas. The star's violent death caused shockwaves far beyond the rap scene. To this day, the case remains unsolved. Although there are ongoing developments, investigators are still baffled, even though someone was arrested in connection with Tupac's murder in the fall of 2023. And perhaps they will remain so forever. Because even if there are people who must know exactly what happened in the attack on Tupac on September 6, 1996, these people remain silent. One thing is clear. With Tupac's success came enemies. In this case, it's about the dark side of the US rap scene, about gang disputes between the East and West Coasts, and about conflicts with other musicians that may have ended fatally.
Tell me, what does Tupac Amaru Shakur mean?
Okay. It means, I was named after this Inca chief from South America whose name was Tupac Amaru, but it's a lot of people named Tupac Amaru. It's like a whole tribe named Tupac Amaru. So my mom named me after this Inca chief, and I think the tribal breakdown means like intelligent warrior, something like that. But
I see.
He's a deep dude.
Tupac Amaru Shakur was born on June 16, 1971. He and his half-sister grew up with their single mother. There was a stepfather, but he was sentenced to 60 years in prison for a bank robbery. Both the stepfather and Tupac's mother, Afeni, were members of the Black Panther movement at the time. The organization advocates for the Black community and socialist values. However, in connection with their activism, the two also crossed legal lines. Afeni spends the first months of her pregnancy with Tupac in prison. She's accused of planning a bomb attack in favor of the Black Panther movement. She's arrested and imprisoned for several months before she gives birth to her son in New York. Tupac, his half-sister, and his mother live in modest circumstances until the family moves to Baltimore. There, Tupac spends what he will later describe as the happiest time of his life. He has a lot of access to culture and art of various kinds because his high school has a special focus on these areas. He engages in poetry, ballet, theater, and, increasingly, rap music. A following interview in which Tupac reflects on his childhood was also conducted at that time. He was only 17 years old at the time.
No, actually, I think it's, well, okay, from my mother's point, well, if you grew up happy, too happy, you know, like in fairy tale land, not fairy tale, I mean, if you grew up where, you know, every Christmas you got a present and every birthday you got a present, and every holiday was a holiday, and everything was peachy. Your parents took care of everything, and you just grew up. I don't think that prepares you for the world. You know, my mother had a really bad childhood, and my father had a bad childhood, and I had a bad childhood, but I love my childhood. Even though it was bad, I love it. I feel like it's taught me so much, and I feel like nothing can faze me. You know, nothing in this world, nothing can surprise me.
On September 7th, 1996, Mike Tyson is boxing against Bruce Halpin. Tupac is in the audience to watch the boxing match. He is with Suge Knight. Also, Tupac's fiancée Kidada and members of Tupac's entourage are on site. The first fans are already lining up in front of the location in the afternoon. Not only admirers of boxing legend Mike Tyson, but also of Tupac. Even before the fight, there is talk that Tupac will watch the fight that evening. Tupac himself spends the afternoon in a casino and wins a lot of money there. The boxing match does not last long. Mike Tyson defeats Bruce Halpin after 109 seconds. As early as 8:30 p.m., the first visitors are streaming out of the MGM Grand and onto the streets of Las Vegas. Tupac and Suge Knight are also on their way out. However, they get into an altercation in the lobby of the building. At around 8:50 p.m., Tupac, Suge Knight, and their entourage get into a fight with members of the Southside Compton Crips gang. The physical altercation is said to have broken out because Suge Knight is close to another gang, the Piru Bloods. And the Bloods and the Southside Compton Crips are enemies. There are many rumors about the exact details of the dispute in the casino foyer. A man is said to have told Tupac that Crips member Orlando Anderson had stolen a necklace from a member of Tupac's entourage that was released by his label Death Row Records. This is said to have led to a fight between Tupac and Orlando, in which members of both sides then became involved. Published camera footage from the evening of September 7th, 1996, shows Tupac and Suge Knight clearly fighting with members of the Compton Crips. Other sources state more precisely that someone from Suge Knight's entourage had been beaten up by a Crip a few weeks earlier. The man had apparently pointed this out to Tupac, whereupon Tupac is said to have opened the conflict. It is shortly after 9 p.m. when Tupac and Suge finally leave the MGM Grand. They drive back to the hotel where Tupac is staying with his girlfriend and his cousin. There, Tupac changes his clothes for the second part of the evening. He tells his cousin and his girlfriend about the fight with the Crips and enthusiastically recounts how he himself fought like Mike Tyson had done in the boxing ring. After that, the rapper and Suge Knight, the head of the record company, go to the after-show party. This takes place in Club 662, a location that belongs to Suge Knight. Tupac is due to perform there later that evening. The two of them get into Suge Knight's car. Tupac's bodyguard also wants to get in, but is stopped by his client. Tupac tells him to follow in a second car with the others. He and Suge Knight still had a private conversation to have, because Tupac was said to have toyed with the idea of leaving Death Row Records, despite the deal with Suge Knight that had gotten him out of prison. At 11 p.m., Suge Knight was briefly stopped by a police checkpoint. The music coming from his speakers is much too loud, and the rental car has no license plates. Nevertheless, Suge Knight is allowed to continue driving. Just a few minutes later, the events that we now know as one of the most notorious murder cases in recent history begin. It is about 11:15 p.m. The car in which Tupac and Suge Knight are sitting stops at a red light on Flamingo Road. A car in which a group of young women are sitting pulls up briefly on the passenger side. The women chat briefly with Tupac, then drive off. A white Cadillac then pulls up next to Suge Knight's BMW. This is the car in which Tupac Shakur's murderer is sitting. Someone in the Cadillac opens fire on Suge Knight and Tupac. A total of 13 shots are fired at the car. 4 of them hit Tupac. 2 of them hit him in the chest. Suge Knight was injured by shrapnel to the head, but remained fully conscious. The shooting lasted only a few seconds. Then the white Cadillac drove off. Suge Knight did a U-turn and steered the car west on Flamingo Road. The car came to a stop on Harm Avenue. The first police officers and emergency doctors arrived at the scene at 11:20 p.m. One of the police officers remembers the incident very well. He opens the passenger door of the car. The seriously injured Tupac falls to the ground in front of him. He is conscious, but it is obvious that his condition is more than critical.
And I looked at him and I said, "Who shot you?" And he looked at me and he was trying to get his breath together, and I thought I was going to actually get some cooperation. So he looked back at me and he said, "F you." And after he said that, his eyes kind of rolled back, he started to gurgle, and he lost consciousness.
Tupac and Suge Knight are immediately admitted to the nearest hospital. Immediately after his admission, Tupac has to undergo emergency surgery. Due to internal bleeding, his right lung is removed.
He's had a right lung removed. He's back in his room, and again, he remains in critical condition. He's in the intensive care unit.
Is he conscious? Can he communicate with his doctor?
He has been conscious. He is under a lot of medication, so he's pretty sedated at this time. He's severely injured. Suffering multiple gunshot wounds is obviously a terrible insult to the human body. So he's in very critical condition, and he's requiring intensive care, and he is receiving that right.
A second operation followed at noon on September 8th. Suge Knight was able to leave the hospital with minor injuries on the morning of September 8th. Tupac Shakur, on the other hand, is fighting for his life. The rapper's injuries are so severe that he had to be put into an artificial coma. According to media reports, doctors believe that he has a 50-50 chance of survival. Family members and close friends rush to his bedside and stand by him day and night. They stand guard outside the hospital room for fear that someone could come in and cause him further harm. Of course, the police are eager to question Suge Knight as a witness after his release, but he is evading the investigators. The lead investigator, Sergeant Kevin Manning of Las Vegas, expresses his frustration with the investigation to the media. He criticizes in particular the lack of cooperation from Shakur and Knight's entourage, who were at the scene during the robbery on Saturday night. Meanwhile, members of Shakur's entourage, who police say are associated with the Blood Street Gang, engage in a scuffle with police. 4 of the men are taken away in handcuffs but are later released. 5 days after the shooting of Tupac, there is another death. A Crip gang member is shot while sitting in his car. There are rumors that the murder was in retaliation for the attack on Tupac. Authorities also maintain a vigil outside Shakur's hospital room to avoid any trouble. Shook, meanwhile, finally makes himself available for questioning by the Las Vegas police. However, he claims to have no further information. Tupac is in the hospital for a week. He remains in a critical condition, is on a ventilator, and continues to have seizures. On September 13, 1996, the life of the influential musician comes to an end. The doctors have stated that the cause of death was respiratory failure and cardiac arrest. Tupac Shakur dies at the age of just 25. He was only 25 years old.
He was like 1 year older than me. You know, he was only 25 years old. We was like, what the fuck?
So, the story of Tupac Shakur ends not with clarity, but with controversy. Nearly 3 decades after that fateful night in Las Vegas, we still don't have all the answers. What we do have is a legacy, one that continues to echo through generations. Was Tupac just another victim of senseless violence, or was there something more sinister at play? A gang rivalry? A government conspiracy? A betrayal from within? Theories continue to swirl, suspects have emerged and faded, and new evidence occasionally bubbles to the surface, but justice has remained elusive. The recent arrest of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis in 2023 reignited hope, but even that has left many with more questions than answers. Tupac wasn't just a rapper, he was a poet, a revolutionary, a symbol, and in many ways, his death has become just as powerful as his life, fueling a myth, a mystery, and a movement that refuses to fade. Until the full truth is uncovered, one thing remains clear. Tupac may be gone, but his voice still speaks, and it refuses to be silenced.